Hey everybody, Casey here for Power Up Poker, and I have an extended example to share with you tonight of how power-ups can affect the game over a longer period of time. We're joined by three players in this scenario, who are already several hands into the game. The player at the top decides that this is a great time to use Fireproof. That means for this hand, all players may see all of the burn cards and may at their option use one of them in assembling their final hand. Now the player on the bottom we see has a queen of diamonds and a 5 of diamonds. The player at the top, a 7 of clubs and a 9 of hearts. And the player to the right, a pair of kings. Very strong pocket. Now the first burn card is a 5 of hearts, and then the flop comes out. We see an 8 of diamonds, a 2 of clubs, and a king of diamonds. So already the player on the right is sitting pretty with three of a kind rather. But we already see the possibility of a flush emerging for the player on the bottom as well. The next burn card is a 10 of clubs, and the turn is a 10 of hearts. Now this is an incredible scenario for the player on the right because they're sitting on a full house effectively, able to use the king of diamonds and that 10 and the 10 from the burn pile. They have 2 10s and 3 kings. The final burn card is a jack of diamonds, and the river is a 4 of clubs. Now the player on the bottom and the top both benefited from Fireproof. The player on the top is able to make a straight 7 to jack, and the player on the bottom got that flush after all thanks to that last jack there. But the player on the right still ends up winning with a full house, kings full of 10s. Now this is particularly interesting because the player on the right a few turns earlier played a power-up of their own. They played Rainy Day. This gave them the ability for the next 5 turns to set aside any portion of their winnings into a reserve account. From this account, they can transfer chips, they can withdraw over the course of time, or they can leave it as a reserve, so that if they run out of chips, all of those chips that are part of that safety net will come into play immediately. This comes in handy a few hands down the line, when the player on the right isn't doing as well as he was before. We can see the hands of the bottom and top players here, and then we see what the right player has. Frustrated because they've been losing for a while now and they're sitting on pocket aces, the player on the right decides this is a great time to go all in from the start. But he forgot. He forgot to look over and see what the bottom player had. An important power-up, Pocket Swap, the ability to swap pocket cards with another player. This is playable before the flop, but after blinds wagers have occurred. Knowing that the player on the right must have something great in order to go all in off the front, they take advantage of this error. We see that there's no help to come from the flop, the turn, or the river for the player on the right. They end up with 2 pair, 3s and 8s, but of course the player on the bottom now has those pocket aces to go along with those 8s, a stronger 2 pair. So they win this hand. But the player on the right still has that reserve that they set aside from Rainy Day. Instead of busting out and being done with the game, they live to fight another day. So this is just a short example to give you a kind of a peek into how the game can unfold. Some hands, there might not be any power-ups played. It's pure Texas Hold'em. Other times, there's just that right moment to employ that extra bit of strategy in order to give yourself the upper hand. Thanks for joining us.